We're back with the big implications of this Chris Christie bridge story. Let's look at the national fallout and what it means for the Republican field come 2016. Governor Christie would have been the mainstream candidate, if you will, to beat. Does this mean he's left to the hard Tea Party right to win this nomination? People like Rubio, who's out there over the place, and Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. Is that what it's come to? Also, who benefits from the Christie mess right now? Scott Walker of Wisconsin, the only other non-Tea Partier who could run for president. How do the Republicans win if a growing percentage of the country, by the way, now identifies itself as independent? We just got that number today. And the smallest percentage ever as Republican. And is there any way right now that Christie can climb out of this mess? If he's involved in this underhanded punishment effort of his to someone who dared to oppose him for re-election, is there any way he can actually get forgiveness from this politically? And will Christie's role now be at best backing some right-wing candidate back in the East Coast? Somehow a guy's vouching for crazy right-wingers on the East Coast. Anyway, Howard Fineman and David Corner are still with us. But also joining us now is Kathleen Parker, syndicated columnist with the Washington Post. Let's go right across the board, Howard and David, and then with Kathleen. And it seems to me the first question is, in Massachusetts, they say the shape of the field determines the winner. What's the shape of the field now that the big guy is probably not in the list anymore?
Well, the shape of the field is that he's going to get ground up in between two very angry opposing forces. The Tea Party people in the Republican Party have never liked him. The conservative blogs and the Tea Party blogs today were alive with ridicule about Christie from the right.
So he's a man without a country.
Right. Meanwhile, the Democrats in New Jersey, whom he had paved over and was ahead. The irony of his muscling the guy in Fort Lee is he didn't need to do it. That's what's so Nixonian about it.
Yeah.
And the Democrats now are in Trenton and elsewhere around the state are embittered. There are going to be investigations, federal, state. The mayor of Fort Lee is going to sue. There's going to be, desire for back money to be paid to the country. This is going to go on, and it's going to lift the lid on his administration. It's going to last 2 years this way.
Yeah, and I just look at the string of firings that's already taken place, David Corn, and I look at it, a guy loses the big $250,000 a year job he put him into, and the other guy for 130 years, another big job working on the bridge, and now he's pretty much targeted his deputy chief of staff, Bridget Kelly. She's going to take how many more people are going to take the bullet for him before somebody says this was the deal? This is what we were here for.
Yeah, you're waiting for the John Dean of Trenton to show up. And that may come, it may not come. But to your question, Chris, you said the shape of the field determines who wins. I think actually the membership of the audience, the composition of the audience determines what the show is. And the Tea Party gang still controls the base of the Republican Party. So when it comes to winning primaries and caucuses especially, that party is so far to the right, it hasn't moved back to the center after the shellacking it got last year in 2012. So I still think the gravitational pull for anybody running is toward the right for Ted Cruz,
but they've never
ran
in the history of the party that I can think of ran a wacko bird. I mean, you'd have to go back to Goldwater.
Well, I know, but the party keeps moving in that direction. Chris Christie was going to get in there and try to fight those currents, and now it seems like he's wounded. I don't see anybody on the horizon who can come in there and fight those currents unless you want to say it's a good day today for a huntsman, which I don't think it is.
Well, let's go to Kathleen here. Kathleen, you know this political world as well as we do, and I want to ask you about this question. After days and days and weeks since basically, I don't know when last fall, this governor has been treading water on this issue. The boat keeps he keeps bailing out. People keep getting fired. New excuses. First of all, there's a traffic study, and now there's somebody that completely lied to him. And I don't know if he believed in the traffic study. He was part of the cover-up, I guess, or else that was part of somebody else's cover-up. And now he's got somebody else he's blaming for misleading him. It took him all day today. He ducked his public appearance again today, showed no face to the press, slipped this little statement out right before NewsHour tonight, and that's the actions of somebody who doesn't like the light. Your thoughts?
Well, Chris, you certainly summed it all up well. Look, I bet there are a lot of Republican candidates out there paraphrasing the deputy chief of staff saying, is it bad that I'm smiling? Who comes in to fill? I think Christie's very badly hurt by this. And part of the reason is that he's always had this this impression of being a bully, and certainly people have testified to that. But it's always been in a moment, where you're reacting to something, you're angry, and you just fire off. But this has the feel of conspiracy to do something that's harmful to the people, whether he had anything to do with it or not. This is the staff that he has surrounded himself with. This is the culture of his own administration. I think that's very bad for Chris Christie. Nobody likes a bully, and nobody wants that kind of personality to represent this country and to the rest of the world.
Well, I get the feeling that, you know, Scott Walker, who my colleague Ed Schultz went after pretty heavily and managed to survive that onslaught from labor and other people. He's the only guy I can think of in American politics, Republican politics, that isn't identified as a Tea Party type. He may be a conservative and a tough guy, but he's not a Tea Party type.
Well, Chris, here's what's, I think, so devastating about this, not just for Christie, but perhaps for the Republican Party. That new survey that you talked about that said the greatest number of the American people identify themselves as independents.
That's news.
Okay, Chris Christie was the guy who was going to appeal to the independents.
Yes.
Because somehow he was outside of and beyond politics. Now, as I said, he's showing himself to be all too typical, maybe even corrupt and mendacious politician. That's going to turn off the independents who like good government, who like people who are outside of the party system and the way politics are usually practiced. This smells of the way politics are usually practiced at the lowest level. That kills him with independent voters.
And you know, Chris, it also...
You know what it reminds me of? That Kelsey Grammer show, Boss, that was on for a few weeks, about 8 weeks. It was so rough they took it off the air, but there was like, he would say to one of his henchmen, this sort of middle-aged Irish guy, disproportionate, when men kill the guy. This isn't that bad, but it's pretty rough.
Let's have some traffic problems.
Chris,
let's have some traffic problems.
This is going to pin Christie down too. There'll be a couple of investigations, and once you start looking at anything, you know this from Washington and from local politics, who knows what else can come up. So he was moving more and more towards the national stage. He took over the Republican Governors Association. He was moving away from Trenton. This is going to pull him back in and get him stuck in whatever mud there may be there.
Well, Trenton makes, the world takes. Thank you so much, Howard Fineman, David Corn. We've all read that on the train. And Kathleen Parker, it's great having you on tonight for this sordid story. You've given us some class. Anyway, this story's not going away. You can bet we'll be talking about it tomorrow. This is the bridge to nowhere for Chris Christie.